Please patronize our sponsors who support the Guild and our mission to educate members and non-members to enjoy and enrich their woodworking skills and experiences. You Pick Hardwood Lumber, Rockler Woodworking and Hardware, and the W.D. Quinn Saw Company.
Welcome everybody tonight. We're going to start off with announcements. We got a Superstar Weekend coming, and March 7th and 8th, and we did get a piece saying that Phil Morley has signed the agreement, and he is going to be here for the presenter of that weekend, so that's good news. Thanks, Dan. Mentorship program, everybody should have gotten an email from Jason. If you can fill that out, and that'll go a long way to helping him know who to pair up for mentorship. You know, the line's out of here. Okay. Again, please, in the shop, please don't use the ladder going up to the attic, and please don't set your glasses, cups, anything wet on any of the steel machines. It makes David have to do more work than he really wants to do. Flicker is going away. I don't know if it has gone away yet. Has it gone away? All right, so Flicker's gone. So if you have any photos that you want to put up on the website or something, see Todd. Webmaster, slwg.org. And then he'll get them up. Classes and presentations. Corey right now, my vice president, is working on classes for next year. So if there's any classes that you would like to see us try to put on, go ahead and let Corey know. Vice president at slwg.org. Picnics coming up. September 7th. I don't know, do we still need volunteers? Last I heard, we still needed people, but I don't know. Okay, if you want to volunteer, just go ahead and holler and we'll get your name on the list. Art fair's coming up. Thank you, August 24th. Looks like we still could use a couple volunteers.
Hello.
Hello.
David Gronefeld. I will be kind of de facto in charge of the art fair. So I have a list. If anyone would like to volunteer, please see me and I'll get you on the list. We got it divided up into 2-hour time slots from 10 to noon, noon to 2, 2 to 4, and then we have a little session before to set up and a little session after for tear down. So if anyone would like to help me with that, that would be great. And again, it's on the 24th. That's Saturday. If it's pouring down rain, then it's postponed till Sunday. So Sunday is the rain date, just so that we are clear on that.
Back on the picnic, if you want to register, there is a link on the homepage under the picnic there to register. We need to get a head count for you so we know how much food to buy and bring and all that stuff. So if you do want to come to the picnic, make sure you click. There's no charge, but go ahead and submit. You can bring your SIG others, and it's a good time. So come on out, free of charge, but make sure you register so we know how many people are going to show up, so we don't have 500 cases of chicken for 10 people or 2 cases of chicken for 500 people. You get the idea. So.
All right. Thank you.
One last thing. If anyone has anything for the art fair, I can collect that tonight. I'm back there on the back table. Or if you want to sign up, that's where I've got the sheet back there. I forgot to tell you where I was. So thanks.
All right. Bob Castegard, right back over here. He's got hats and aprons. Now, next announcement. Jay.
Good evening. So a lot of you know that we've been working and looking into the feasibility, and that's what I've always called it, a feasibility study of whether or not we even want a new workshop or whether we need a new workshop. But if we do, where could it be the most economical way of going about it, and so on. We thought we were making progress. A lot of you understand where we stand right now, but we had the rug kind of pulled out from under us of what we thought was going to be a relatively less expensive option to have a bigger shop, and that's not going to work out. So it's become more and more obvious to us that we're going to have to have a capital project to actually bring in a lot more money than we could ever make just continuing with what we're doing right now. And in order to do that, we need to convince people who might be considering donating to our wonderful organization that we're utilizing what we already have to the fullest. And a couple of areas that are in that, couple of items or examples of that might be in that area. One would be that we are indeed using our current shop to its maximum capacity. So we get David Gronefeld every month gives us the usage of the shop, and it seems to be relatively steady over a period of time. There have been a lot of complaints about it not being open enough, that we don't have enough open shop hours. It's probably true. There's one problem with looking for more open hours, and that is the best time to have more open hours would be weekends. That's when a lot of people, if they work during the week, that's the only time they could come, and that's not going to work right now. We can't do that. But we do have several spaces that would be available to us to add extra open shop hours, and we're going to go ahead with that. So David, already, if you haven't looked at the guild, it's not a newsletter. It's the calendar. He already has published for September coming up in a few weeks, 2 more open shop hours, days. One is a Monday, the other one is a Tuesday. So they're already published. We're going to start this. We're going to see how it goes. And we're going to see, because there are several other times, again, like it's a 10 to 2 time frame. It's not going to be evenings, and it's not going to be weekends to begin with, at least. What we're hoping is that it's popular, and we do get increased utilization, so that's one more thing that we can give to people when we come up with a capital campaign, that we are utilizing our facilities to the fullest as an enticement for them to say, and we need more. We're doing all these things for the community and so on, and we need your help, though. The other thing that we're probably, well, I've mentioned this before several times too, we are probably going to end up having to increase dues. Dues haven't been increased since about 2018, and that's when they went to the current due setup and so on. And among the enticements for, not enticements, but telling you why we need the dues increase, besides the fact that obviously there's been significant inflation. We have more equipment, we have better equipment, we have expendable items that need to be replaced and so on an ongoing basis. But what we do in our guild, the usage of that shop, talk about a bargain. Even if you're paying the $75 and so on for unlimited usage of the shop, it's an unbelievable bargain. So we're probably going to be looking at that. In fact, I can tell you we're going to be looking at that. So if any of you have strong feelings about the idea of that, or would you quit the guild if we did increase the dues and so on, we would love to hear from you. So anybody that's on the board, if you would like to give your opinion, you need to do so, because we're going to be looking at that. But the increased usage of the shop would kind of go along. You know, we're giving some extra things, and we need to think about a dues increase too. Give an example. Kansas City has a 6-layer dues system, and the first 3 of them have 0 usage of the shop equipment and so on, and that's getting up to $200 for the dues without even being able to use. So it's only when you get to the fourth level that you, and that, I think that's $250 or $225, something like that. I have it on my phone if somebody really wants to look at it. And that's the first time that you actually have the usage of the shop and so on. So again, we're nowhere close to that. Other things in the city, makers, tell me, maker space is significantly more than that each month. So that's going to happen too. Once again, I think then we can, for a capital improvement program, we can say, and our own members are doing what they can do and so on to raise money. But that isn't going to work until we do something further then too. So that's going to be coming out. Just wanted to make sure you knew about it. And if you have any strong feelings, please let somebody on the board know about it. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir. We don't know that either because it depends on what we might be able to do. We thought we had a space in Faust Park. We thought that they were willing to let us have this particular area in Faust Park where we could build a shop of 2,400 square feet, if not double that. In fact, we could do double that then too. But it turned out that there are so many reasons why that isn't going to really work out so easily as we thought maybe to begin with. That would have gone a long way to having the cost not be astronomical. If we can't do something like that, we might see if we can find a space, as another space, but already has a building on it, or a farmland or something that we could use and go back to the building kind of concept and so on. But until we talk to people about a lot of money, the capital project, we're going to need exactly what you ask. We need to find that out. But it all depends on what we're doing. If we were going to take over a lease like at Quinsaw, they have a wonderful space. Several of us went and looked at it. It would be absolutely ideal for us. It was $12 a square foot for a lease. That's per year. Add that up. They have dropped that to $10 a square foot because they haven't got any takers. And that was like for 4,800 square feet. We just can't do that. You could do that calculation and see what that came out, and that would be on a yearly basis because it's a lease. So I wish I could give you that number, but we're going to find out. We need to find out that number before we can go out and ask for money. Well, let's start with that. You can look at $10 a square foot for 4,800 square feet per year. That's a lease. If we bought a building, it's different from us building a building. If we were going to build a building, I wish Bill Shukot was here tonight because we had some numbers that we found out. We weren't going to have to purchase the land or anything. It looked like that was a benefit. We'd kind of have a head start on not needing to look at that. But the building itself, does anybody, you remember the number we came up with? Is that what it was? Something like that. You know, it's much more achievable. I mean, it wasn't.
Shell.
Yeah. Exactly. So anyway, but that's a big difference from $10 a square foot every single year, and that's huge. So I don't know. But we are talking about, as a minimum, trying to get something that's about 2,400 square feet instead of the current 1,200 or something like that square feet. The square footage we're looking at is a minimum of the 2,500 square feet, where we currently have about half of that, with expandability up to about 5,000. That's the square footage that we're looking at, probably wanting and needing, though.
We checked into buying one building, and because it had been vacant forever, and they wanted almost $500,000 for it. It was like $460,000 for this building to buy.
By the way, Kansas City, they do lease, They went and surveyed about 25 different, what do you call it, industrial, the little low industrial, light industrial space and so on before they settled on it. They pay $12 a square foot for about 12,000 square foot space that they have.
Wow.
Jay, have we gone out to a realtor, an industrial source realtor, to ask them to see what is available? and
So
what kind of costs
Vicky
are?
Berry is one of the people that is specifically looking at that. And we also are looked at the Quinn place. It would be wonderful for us. And would they be willing to let us only have half of it? Because, you know, it's just empty space they have right now. Would they be willing? And I think they like us a lot.
Yeah.
We like them. They're wonderful people to work with. So maybe they would say, you know what, unless we get somebody else coming on board, because they don't really need to lease it right now, maybe they would let us have it for $5 a square foot, knowing that we could be kicked out at any time then. So we're looking, yes, we're looking into that though.
Jay, I agree. A new shop would be very nice. I've been to the Kansas City shop, the one before they moved. I agree, very nice. I've been to a couple of others around the country. I guess my question is, what's been our process to determine that we, in fact, need a new shop?
Great
But
question.
I know half the members of the guild have their own shop at home and don't need it. So
Great question, and that's another thing. The feasibility study. That's what I'm calling it.
Yeah.
We may conclude we don't need or can't afford a new shop, and can the whole thing. Absolutely.
One of the couple different things driving it, but one of the things that we really want is we want classrooms along with the shop. So if the shop is open, we can have more classes. We can teach more people woodworking and do things like that, get more stuff like that. The way it is right now, we're limited with the hours that we're at. We can't be there after dark. And you can't hold a class when you're running an open shop. So that's some of the things that we're looking for.
To 1,000 members in the current shop.
I agree with the classes. It's a bit of it's tight.
Yeah, and there's a lot more classes that we can do. We don't have the time. We don't have the space.
But classes are gobbling up a lot of the what could be open shop hours, especially on the weekends. Yes. I don't think they're worried about kicking us out. I think they like us and so on. And I don't remember, we pay per year.
We pay I think it's $440 a month.
A month.
Is that 400 times 11?
But if we did have a new shop or a new building, we could maybe have that also, get rid of needing this building and so on. And that would be where our meetings would be too, our monthly meetings. Somebody back here?
Yeah, I was wondering what area are you narrowing it down to? What area?
What area we want to narrow it down to?
Not much farther west than here. But see, there are a few of us in the room that live in Metro East, but we'd love to have it over there. But that isn't going to work either. I think Matt did a survey of. We tried to find the midpoint of our population of our members, and we're not far from it here.
No.
I think the one in Creve Coeur, where the last place we had our monthly meetings, it was pretty much almost the center point, if I remember right, of our population, if we had the perfect place from a geographic point of view. Though. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you do something with that greenhouse? It's right across the street.
The what house?
The greenhouse.
Greenhouse
The
that's
glass house, as the Brits say.
at Faust Park. I think Faust Park, David, I think it's out.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's too much politics involved.
Yeah, We are in the building that we're in now as a gentleman's agreement, and there is no official documentation that we're actually using it. It's just that our members volunteer at the park, and that provided us the ability to use that building. And since we established that, things have changed in the county, and now any entity that wants to use a county facility like that now has to go to the voters in the entire county. So we would have to have a campaign to allow us to use that. We would have to go through all that. Plus that greenhouse building, the glass is falling out of it. It's a dangerous building to be in. It had to be extensively renovated in order for it to be used, and it would be hot as hell in the summertime.
And there's no plumbing there.
And there's no plumbing there either. No. There is electrical service if they turn it on, but at this point it is not on. So those are the hurdles that we have with expanding in the park. Is anything we do will now be subject to a countywide vote. So that would be a campaign that we would have to wage, a wide campaign.
Yep.
Having a woodworking shop with glass walls doesn't sound like a wonderful idea to me.
No.
Glass houses.
Any other questions so we can move on here?
If you have-
Please look at the schedule
Yeah.
and notice that we do have 2 extra open shop hours coming up in September. And if that goes over well, we can add to that and so on. There are several more places, unfortunately not weekends, that we could add at open shop hours. So.
All right. And if you have anything that you want to put towards the board about the dues or anything, just email board@slwg.org, and we'll get it, and we'll go from there. We'll answer your questions. Classes. Well, as of tonight, the first 2 for the mantle clock, they're full. So there's no spots left. The only upcoming one is Mike Sistick, and he's got 2 spots left. It's amazing how fast things fill up.
The classes are full for making the mantle clocks themselves. However, it doesn't cost you anything, and you're more than welcome to come up and watch the bending of the wood, which everybody seems to be interested in doing. So that doesn't cost you a thing. And once again, the 2 dates, well, they disappeared. The 31st was the first one of this month. And I believe it was the 22nd of September was the second one. And
Yes.
but those are free, and you're more than welcome to come up. And I'm going to be bending on both days. So just want to put that out there for you guys.
All right. Do we have any new members and or visitors? Please stand up and introduce yourself.
I'm Larry Strayhorn, a new member. This is going to be a new hobby for me. I've always wanted to learn woodworking, and this is the place I'm going to start now.
All right. Welcome.
I'm Kevin Solister. I was invited out here by my uncle. I'm a master carpenter for a local theater in St. Louis, and I used to manage some shops for the university I attended in Rolla, Missouri. And I'm looking to get back into woodworking, and since I don't have my own shop, this was a great opportunity.
All right. Welcome.
I'm Harold Thornburg. I'm a retired industrial technology teacher from Kirkwood. I taught there for 25 years. Now, I just came up, I've read a bunch of veneer I just wanted to bring up, but may join. I do a lot of wood turning.
All right.
So,
welcome.
I'm Andrew Solwasser. I'm actually this guy's son. Not a master carpenter. I'm just a hobbyist. But I made a few pieces of furniture and managed to make one without a single piece of, no screws involved, and I felt very good about that. So I'd love to see what else you guys can show me.
All right. Thank you. Welcome.
My name's Craig Jordan. I'm a friend of Corey's. I just decided to come and see what you guys are all about. I started woodworking about 15 years ago, just making little instruments and stuff. So sounds really cool.
All right. Thank you. And welcome.
Dan Turner. I'm a mechanical engineer for a large aerospace corporation located in the St. Louis area. I'm here with my wife, actually, who's visiting, and we're here supporting your presenter this evening, Joe Turner. So he taught me a lot growing up about woodworking. I've been around it my whole life, so I don't do a ton, but I do a lot, and I enjoy it. I get it. I get a kick out of it. So I might let my wife introduce herself too.
All right. Welcome.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm Christina Turner. But he says, oh, I do a little. All of our furniture or tables are made by this guy in our house. So, and also Joe, and also my family benefits as well with a bunch of coffee tables and bookshelves. So happy to be here and happy to support Joe.
All right. Oh, I think that's it. All right. This was great. Welcome, everybody. This is one of the biggest ones we've had in a while. Oh, community outreach. This one's going to be a quickie because nobody's here tonight. Steve, how many toys have we collected tonight? A lot?
Just a minute.
136 toys. All right.
And you asked what toys we needed. And as of yesterday, helicopters, large airplanes, and trucks.
Ooh, trucks.
But if you're using pin nails, please make sure they stay in the wood.
Yeah.
And
countersink them.
Yeah. Who owns the pile of junk to the right when you first go in the shed?
This is see when you first go in the shed.
To the right, military right.
This way. That's why I wear a watch on the left, you know.
Yeah. You can't get to the shelves with the toys without taking your life in your own hands. So if you belong to it or it belongs to you, take care of it, please.
So as everybody, if you read in the newsletter, every time you make not just a toy, but toys and turn it into the toy table, everybody who turns a toy in will get one raffle ticket. And we had 5 or 6 or 7 tonight. That's good. We need more people making toys. Toys are easy. Thinking about doing a toy class, if we can find a date, for beginning people and beginning in woodworking who wants to learn how to make easy toys. I make some really easy ones, doesn't take long at all. And that's what I'm thinking is what I'm thinking about doing. Christmas toy programs. Wayne's not here tonight, so I'll just go over a few things. They meet twice a month, 10 and 2. It was supposed to be tomorrow, but that just canceled. Like you come by, they make Toys for Tots and the Festival of Trees. And like it says at the bottom, and Shriners reminded me of this tonight, and I told them I had a slide for it, that all items for the Festival of Trees has to be turned in on the October meeting. So we got until September, October, 2 months. So get to work. Home Sweet Home. I got a new picture for Home Sweet Home, so.
I did not bring wood tonight. I did bring 3 table kits, and I hope they go home with somebody other than me. So the table kit is one of our small side tables. We met a couple weeks ago, worked 3 days basically, and took rough sawn lumber, made boards, and then took the boards, cut them into parts for table kits. So program's going well. We have 41 tables so far this year, and 261 tables since the program started 2 years ago. So We need table builders like we need the toy builders, and it's still going to be hot, so you need to be inside in your shop building tables. So appreciate it.
Thank you. This is our question and answer period time. First we got one first question here.
I ran into a really good deal at an estate sale on some veneer. But can anyone tell me what this is?
It's veneer.
What species is this? Is it maple? Is it cherry? Is it some other?
It looks like wood.
So I'll pass it around, and so you can look at it a little closer. When it comes back, if somebody come see me and let me know what it is. I've got a whole lot of it, like about 140 plus pieces that are 4 to 5, 6 inches wide and 48 to 58 inches long. So it's 6/10 of a millimeter thick.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or problems that they're having with in the shop? Here we go, back here.
I just made a table for Home Sweet Home, and it was a veneer over MDF, okay, you know, the table leaf that I made into a table. And in the past, I've done one of those, and I put some tung oil on it, okay, and then to protect the finish, I put an oil-based polyurethane on top of it, okay. I went out and bought some new tung oil, and it was, quote, pure tung oil from Woodcraft. And when I put the oil-based polyurethane on it, it never dried. Has anyone else had that problem, or make a suggestion?
Try Danish.
Danish?
It's a mixture of tung oil and a varnish. Tung oil is a natural product, and it will never dry. In fact, if you use it on furniture or kitchen cabinets, it has to be redone periodically. So I usually get Danish oil. My favorite is Watco, and that's a mixture of tung oil and a varnish. I don't know what proportion, but the varnish will make it dry.
A number of years ago, I acquired a set of threading tools. It's basically like a hand plane with a little V cutter in it that you use for cutting threads. And I made a lot of little kid toys with this, little nuts and bolts and stuff, and they worked really great. Recently I got them out again, resharpened them, they're just fine. I bought some brand new dowels, and they just chewed up. Does anybody have any good recommendations on what the best species of wood to use for the dowels when you're going to thread those dowels?
Ooh, something good and hard.
Sugar maple.
Sugar maple?
Sugar maple.
Okay. Because the modern, what they call ramen ones, they chew up too easy, so.
Oh.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Here we go. We got one right here.
Yeah, my wife recently inherited a writing desk that's 150 years old or something. I'm not exactly sure. And it seems to have, I think it's overall made out of, I'm not sure if it's mahogany or what, but just a nice type of soft, workable hardwood. The top seems to be like a cork laminate, and it's actually peeling off at the front edge. And what I'm trying to figure out is the best way to repair it, if I should just glue underneath it and then clamp it down with some cowls, or if it's something that actually should just be completely replaced. I am open to suggestions.
Rubber cement works really great for stuff like that.
Rubber cement?
On contact cement, top and the bottom, and then clamp it down, and it'll stay.
Yeah, because it's not, I don't want to peel it too far back. That's
Right.
the other
Yeah,
part
but
of
you
it.
can get in there with like a toothpick.
Right.
And do that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Okay, so I've got one. I have recently picked up a set of plans for some toy cars. said make sure when you print it off the book that this is 3 inches. Printed it off, that is 3 inches. I cut all the pieces, car won't go together. It's like, I don't know who they showed pictures of them. Hey, here's ones we built. Yeah, right, not from these plans. So I'm sitting there having to rework them all, and I'm just wondering if anybody else had run into anything to where they bought the plans that you try to make it and they don't work. There's a lot of sanding going on here to try to get this thing to fit.
It's often a situation where your printer isn't printing to scale.
I'm going right to scale because it says this is 3 inches at the top of the page, and I'm perfectly at 3 inches because I had to go.
Wow.
I had to go up to 107% to hit 3 inches.
So you worked it through.
Yep. But you go to the pieces. Some of them are like that much longer. Some of them are that much shorter. And then way too tall. It's like it just doesn't fit. We got it. Looks like we got an answer back over here, and one over here. right there first. He's closer.
Most of we need to know first of all what you were copying on. If you're using your printer and stuff at home, it's not going to work. Go to Office Max or something like that, and their machines are a lot more accurate.
Well,
that's probably part of the problem.
You have to know my background. I've designed printers. I write code to make printers work with thin clients.
Our cheap printers you didn't design.
And my printer is very expensive and perfect. When I set it down there, and I can adjust it up because I can't adjust. Oh, next question back here. Our answer.
Maybe is it like a box where the ends, the thickness of the other parts contribute to the problem? Or it's
That's
not
what I
just
thought
length,
too, but yeah, some of them are
thicknesses or widths?
Some of them are 3/4 inch and 3/16 of an inch, and that's really the only thicknesses.
They're on
the
the
two
money
thicknesses
though when
that are.
you've milled them to the specific measurement.
Yeah.
No idea. You're on your own.
Yeah, it's just like what a waste of $14. I spend more time redrawing this and reworking these plans to get this car to work. That I'm going, this is ridiculous. This shouldn't be this hard. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking it and I scanned. I took the pictures, took a picture with my camera, brought it into my PC, brought it into easel on my 3D printer, and now I'm sitting there with my mic going, okay, you're this far away from here, so okay, I move this over here. So that's what I'm doing for my CNC machine.
So have you considered possibly that the software you're using may have the issue? I have a plain old Brother printer, just your basic laser printer, and it's dead on every time. But I use TurboCAD to create the drawings in the printout. Maybe if we're using Word or something like that, maybe it wasn't made for that.
Well, I was just, my printer copies. So I'd throw the page on there and copy it and make sure that I'm right to the size.
All right, because the software can
Oh
be
yeah,
an
I know
issue.
if I print out of like FreeCAD.
Right.
I have to readjust.
Yeah, because the
Because
CAD I use
FreeCAD prints smaller.
Okay, because CAD that I use, if I do 1-to-1, it's dead on. It splits the. But I was just thinking that might be.
What was the name of that?
I use TurboCAD.
TurboCAD.
But that's one of the applications. But just something to look at if you're gonna print something.
Yeah.
So.
Because I'm bringing it in for my CNC machine because I want to see if I can get it that way. All right, is that it? Oh, we got one back there for Steve.
How old are the plans?
Brand new. They had just been released this year.
Okay, never mind.
Okay. I have been thinking about that, and I will put it in the next president's letter because it's crazy. I got another one that I bought two, and one of them is a dump truck, and I'm sitting there looking at the dump truck, and I'm going, there's the same problem with this as there is with the car. So All right. If you have a show and tell, come on up here to the front so we can get you mic'd up. Now, plans that did work well for me, well, this is my own design. This is the one that I brought last month, but I didn't like it just plain white, so I turned it into a hippie van. And it's pretty neat. Stickers is like this with my red VW microbus. On my 3D printer, I'm making shovels and rakes and implements of destruction to put in the back. How many get that one? And then my wife goes, well, what about a school bus? So I made a school bus, painted it yellow and white. And then I'm sitting there, when I got done with this one, I made another one for my grandson. And I looked at it and I went, you know, I can make a pickup truck out of that. So I changed the pattern and I made a pickup truck. So that's just some of the little cars and stuff that I make. They're easy, they're quick. Like this one here is 5 pieces. This one here is 4 pieces. So scroll saw. Yep. Yep. This, I'm also turning this pattern into my CNC machine so I can make some and have the CNC work on some, because I can do 2 at a time and I can scroll saw 4 pieces at a time, so I can get 6 done in a day if I do it that way. Okay, next.
I spend a lot of time goofing around looking on Facebook and so forth, and there's a lot of bovine scatology on there. But every once in a while, something comes along and grabs my attention. And a couple of months ago, a guy was doing what he called wood weaving. So as opposed to inlaying, you actually cut the whole piece out and then glue it all back together. And it really comes up with no set pattern. It's just whatever pattern you come up with. To give you a little better idea, if you glue up pieces and you put them, you go ahead and make your saw cut on your bandsaw, and then you'll take another very thin piece, I don't know, that's poplar or whatever it is. You put that in, and then you glue it together, and that comes out nicely, and then you just keep adding on to the stuff until you get a pattern that you're satisfied with. But I really found it to be an interesting process. It takes a lot of time, because each time you make a cut, you have a glue up, and that's a couple hours of waiting, and you really never know what you're going to come up with. So I wound up with this piece. I was going to make a cutting board, but I liked it and my wife said, well, that'll look nice on the dining room table, and we could put a flower base on it. So now it holds flowers or salt and pepper or whatever she decides that it's worthy to have on it. But it is a fun process to do it. If you haven't tried screwing around with it and you got some scrap wood, it is a lot of fun to play with. It's also maddening, like most other projects. Next.
Leo. I did a bandsaw box. So normally I do wood turning, but you don't have to have a lathe to make a nice box. You know, it's just a matter of cutting a piece apart, cutting the center out, cutting the bottom off, using part of the center for the top. This piece happened to be golden shower tree, came from Hawaii. Every time we're traveling, I always look for where the woodworking shops are, the crafts people that are doing woodworking, and they almost always have scraps left over. And oftentimes you'll get them either for free or for not much, because it's scrap to them and they're moving on to another project. So, but it made a nice project here. Thank you.
I'm Leo Weissman. This is a tool that they use sewing. It's made for spacing your buttons. And Rockler has one that's made out of heavier steel. I think it was close to $40. And this is $9 on Amazon. So if you get tired of measuring each time when you're trying to make whatever number of spaces, this is the trick. So it makes life much easier. And I don't know if you can see any of these characters I've got here. They're just cute little scroll saw characters. And I made them to donate for the sale to contribute to the club. So anyway, have a look after a while. I'll just hold up one more one. I think it's a real cute one. So anyway, thank you very much.
My name's Craig Jordan. I thought you had to bring something. I'm new, so I brought one of the instruments that I started making years ago. It's got a curly maple neck, spruce top, cherry sides, and a walnut back. So kind of my little hobby, but so it works. I should have been here years ago so I could have taken that wood bending class. I built a wood steaming box, but when you're working with something this thin, I didn't need it. I was just able to put it in hot water. I couldn't bend it with the steam because the wood didn't have enough mass to hold the steam, so I finally ended up using hot water to bend it. So pretty fun. And then here's one of the molds that I use to make it. So that's it.
My name's Paul Bailey, and I don't have anything with me because my kids have everything. But just to tell you, I started doing woodworking 10 years ago. We moved here 20 years ago from Rhode Island, and I had a photo studio, and I sold all that gear on eBay and started buying woodworking tools. And the running joke in my family is my girls call and say, "Oh, Dad, I need," fill out the blank. My older daughter is a teacher, and her first classroom had nothing but desks for the kids, and she's a reading specialist. So she wanted to get books and bookcases, and she didn't have any. My wife was a teacher, and I went to her school, and I found a bookcase like 3 by yay, and I started making them. And we counted out, I've made 16 of them to this point. And then every teacher needs a mailbox. So I designed this. There's no plans, no nothing, but it's probably about this high. It's a lot of cutting with masonite shelves, that go like this. And the handles on the drawers, I bought at Home Depot or whatever, and they're curved because she had a little boy that decided he was going to climb up that all the way. They didn't break, thankfully, but that's in her classroom, and there's more teachers than you can guess that would like to have that because they all wind up with cardboard ones from Target, and by the end of the school year, they're rubbish. So that's about 10 years old, and it still looks like new. That was a big project. Next one, Hal. These are Adirondack chairs, and I made 3 of them. Again, my girls, "Oh, Dad, I wanted a chair for my deck." Each one of those chairs has $200 of cedar in it, and I thought, well, cedar's nice, and they'll weather nicely, and they don't have to paint them. But they wanted a color, so they're all stained, and you have to stain them before you can put it together. And each one of those chairs has $200 worth of cedar from Menards, and I learned that's the cheapest place around here you can get it. So I haven't made one for me yet, and my wife would really like them because they're really comfortable. But I don't have a place to do it, and I just don't want to spend $200 for a chair, but her friends would love to have those. So anyway, that's another project. So things that I do in the shop, it's about 10 years I've been doing woodworking, and this is what comes out of it. So, "Oh, Dad, I need," fill in the blank.
All right, so I'm tonight's presenter. My name is Joe Turner. I've been a member for about 10 years, and so a lot of you guys probably know me, and you know from my various show and tells that my primary interest in woodworking is puzzles. And when I talk about puzzles, I'm not referring to jigsaw puzzles, but rather what's known as mechanical puzzles. Think of a Rubik's Cube or Chinese puzzle boxes, those types of things. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight is the making of my latest puzzle, which I call Two Guys and a Gal. You'll also hear me refer to it as Free Me 9, which is the latest in my edition of Free Me Puzzle Series collection that I've got. This is the puzzle, matches that picture. It consists of 3 parts, a center part that has 3 coins, and then 2 outer parts that if you looked at the edge, you'd be able to see are dovetails that are held on to the center part. And the goal is to remove the 2 guys, which are Kennedy $50 coins, and the gal, which is a $1 Statue of Liberty coin known as an innovation coin that the Mint started making in 2018. And I chose that center coin because its diameter is a little smaller than the outer coins, and it fit perfectly in the design concept that I had. So, tonight's agenda. I'm going to tell you a little, I'm going to talk just a little about my Freeme series, Freeme puzzle series. And I talk about my typical objectives and features that I try to incorporate into a puzzle. I'm going to then show you how to solve this puzzle. Once I do that, I'll show you what's inside that makes this puzzle a puzzle. Talk just a little more about the design process that I go through. Then the bulk of the presentation is going to be about the actual making of the puzzle, both the wood portion of the puzzle as well as all the internal components that are in that puzzle. Talk a little about the selling and the shipping of this puzzle, as well as, sadly, I have one other category, which is called failures. Ideally, I wouldn't have anything to say there, but actually I have more than I want to say about that. I also have some lessons learned in what I call relearn, but I realize the word I should really use is reapply. Lessons that I learned from other puzzles that I applied here. And fear not, there are lots of pictures along the way here. So we're going to talk about the puzzle series itself. Now, Freeme 9 implies there should be 8 Freeme puzzles prior to that, and indeed there are. Here's a picture of them all, and I have them on my table over here if you want to get a closer look. You can see that the first Freeme puzzle was in 2003. Now, I should give you a little history. I actually started designing puzzles in the early 1990s. I had some puzzle books, and I remember looking at them and saying, gosh, I wish I could have some of these puzzles. But they were old, and they didn't sell them, or I didn't know where to sell them. The internet didn't exist. And so I said, I wonder if I can make any of these. And I found a real simple one to make, and I made a jig on my table saw, and I was able to make it. And once I did, I was like, gosh, I got the jig, I could make a bunch of these. So I made about 20 of them. I come from a big family, and so I gave them to my family for Christmas, and I said, you know what? From now on, I'm gonna make a Christmas puzzle instead of trying to find presents for my family from various stores. So that got me started, and initially, the puzzles I made were out of various books. Periodically, as my skills improved, I came up with ideas, and that's where the Freeme puzzle in 2003 came from. The name, I had a coin, it was in a puzzle, you had to free it. I was like, free me. And it was that simple. I really didn't have any marketing support on that concept or name. But it has since become known amongst my puzzle community collectors. 2004, I made a modification to the original puzzle, and I said I'll call that Freeme 2. It was another 10 years or so before I actually made an additional puzzle. After that, I started getting ideas. I had developed more skills. And really, from now on, if I make a new puzzle, it's going to be a Freeme puzzle. Design objectives and features. As I mentioned, the objective for this one is to free the 2 guys and the gal. One of my other objectives was to make 200 of these puzzles. And I wanted to make 150 to sell to my puzzle collecting community, and then 50 for family and friends. Features that I try to get into all these puzzles. I started making them out of cherry. It was a pretty color. Wood was affordable. And so I just kept using cherry for all of my puzzles. But I've also incorporated maple in the last couple. Reasons for that is I have a CNC machine now. My puzzles have gotten a little more complicated. I resaw my board down the middle and open it up so I can do some routing internally. Well, when I resaw it, I lose 1/16 of an inch with the bandsaw. Then I lose more wood when I do the thickness planing. And basically the maple is replacing that lost wood that I have. And when I glue it back together, the 2 outer boards, the grain kind of, it looks like it all blends together. And so that's the objective of that maple. And like I said, I really think the maple on the cherry gives it a really nice look. One of my goals is that the puzzle is manageable. It's not too big or too small for the hand. It feels just right to work with as you're playing with it. Needs to be appealing, at least to me. And what I mean by appealing, it needs to be nice enough that you take the puzzle and be willing to put it up on the mantle above your fireplace, rather than put it in the fireplace, you know, or as some people do, put it in a drawer. The goal is to not do that, but I know from experience that a lot of people do put my puzzle into their drawer and kind of forget about it. I understand. They might. I do know that kids have tried to break it. I had to glue a puzzle that my brother gave me back because his kids wanted the money. They didn't want to solve it to get it. I want the puzzle to be challenging, and so I recognize that my puzzles are not for the faint of heart. And then I want the puzzle to be of an original design or a significant modification to a design that already exists. I used to, like I said, make the puzzles from books, but with my skills improving now and my ideas for new designs, I've lost interest in doing it that way. If I'm going to make a puzzle, it's going to be an original design. All right, so let's do the solution. The way we're going to do that, I need to take the puzzle with me. I've got an over-the-shoulder camera, and I'm going to show you guys how to solve this puzzle. Ideally, you'd get a chance to play with the puzzle first and get familiar with it and learn some things about it. Unfortunately, we don't have that time, so I'm just going to have to kind of tell you about those things as we go. Got the camera? All right, so it's supposed to autofocus. Let me know. All right, well, I'll tell you, as I'm holding the camera here, if you tilt it like this, you'll see that there's a hole on the top and slightly to the right. So this is the front of the camera, or the front of the puzzle. Is this going to focus, guys? All right. And like I said, if you got a chance to play around with it, you'd find out that the end puzzle pieces do not move. There's something constraining the puzzle from those sliding off. And if you played around with the coins, you'd find that the right coin is fairly solid in there. The center coin, if I play around with it, it actually moves up and down. There's a spring in there that allows some movement. If I play with the left coin, it'll move to the right and then back. And it's important to discover that so that you can start the process of solving the puzzle. Well, this was working earlier for us, and so that's why it's interesting. All right. Hopefully this is still good enough for you guys to see what's going on. All right, so to solve the puzzle, we rotate the puzzle right end down. We're going to pull on the left coin down, and that allows me to push this just a little, about 1/8 of an inch, but not any farther. Not only that, but I find that when I try to push it back, it won't go back. But not to worry, that's good. That means the puzzle's working properly. If I pull on the center coin now in its upward position, and I push this and I play with this a little more, now it will slide off completely. If I tip it out, I can get the coin out. And along with it, I have what I call a coin holder, and on it I wrote, free me 9. So remind you what the puzzle's called. Coin comes out, and I also have a brass rod and a copper nail. So I have 1 of 3 coins out. I should mention that this type of puzzle that I designed is referred to as a sequential discovery puzzle. And what that means is that you work through a sequence of steps to solve the puzzle. And as you do, you discover tools along the way that will help you in solving subsequent steps in the puzzle. And that's the case here as well. If I take the brass rod and I insert it into the copper nail hole, if I was able to see that, you can see it there. It's about 1/4 inch down. But if I pull that center coin again and shake a little, it has now disappeared. If I put my copper nail back in and push on it, I can feel it's springy. It's bouncing back up and down. And if I push the other end, it moves a little, but not enough. So there's more to be done. As I mentioned, there's tools here, and you've got to keep everything in mind of being a tool, and it turns out that this guy is a tool. If I move this around on my puzzle, I start noticing that it's sticking a little. And it actually will stick on this end. And the reason it does is there's a magnet. And that magnet has attracted itself to another magnet and pulled a pin out of the way. So with that pin pulled out of the way and me pushing on another pin, I can now slide this the other direction and slide it off. I got coin number 2 out. And it just so happens, and the nail. And it just so happens that this is called 2 guys and a gal. So that's the other name for the puzzle. And I'm going to remove that brass rod. All right, we're 2/3 of the way there. Now I've got my last coin. Oh, and I also wanted to mention that the right end piece, we able to see this? Yeah. The right end piece, we've got 2 pins here. That upper pin is the pin that you can see is moving with that magnet. That's what was accomplished there. And the white plastic pin here was the one that the copper nail ultimately was pushing in to get that one out of the way. So when both of those were out of the way, I was able to slide the thing off. Now, the right end, we see we have a little rectangular hole here. That was where the magnetic pin was going into. If I take my brass rod and push on the back wall, I find that that's springy. And that's nice to know. If I look at the hole in the top and I push on that brass rod, I'll see that, you guys can't see it, but there's a piece of wood blockage there, and as I push on it, I can see that suddenly that's opening the hole for me. And my initial thought is, hey, I've solved the puzzle. But no. Oh, by the way, there's a rod inside holding this third coin in the way. And I believe I want to get that rod to come through that hole. And once I do, ideally, my coin will come out. As I look and I notice when I push with that rod, although it's making a hole for me, it's not making it all the way open. What I need to do is I need to lift the coin up a third time and push, and now I see it is completely open for me, and now I'm ready to. So one of 2 things is happening. Either my puzzle is broken or I've missed a step. And I know it's not broken because I played with it several times. I've missed a step. As it turns out, my left end wooden tool with a magnet is needed. I slide it on the right end dovetail, and if you listen, you can hear a clicking sound. It has pulled something internally that you didn't know you had to worry about. And now when we lift the coin and we push this in, now the rod falls out, and I get my third coin out. And it's that simple. All right. My wife has told me that I'm devious, and my puzzles are devious, and my answer to her is, this is what my collectors want. You know, they want to be challenged, and so, all right. Now, we're going to look inside. What makes this puzzle a puzzle? To do that, I need to start with my software. And I recognize that what you're looking at right now means nothing to you guys. But this is my V-Carve software, and to tell the CNC machine what to do, you start here. And these are called vectors, and a vector is just a line that takes on a shape. It can be a circle. I know I got a point. So it can be a circle. It can be rectangles, the long rectangles. It can be a kind of a rectangle that's merged with a circle and different parts have been erased. It can be whatever it needs to be, and I know as I'm thinking, because I know the next step in this process of what I want it to look like. So I create these vectors. These vectors will now be used to create tool paths. And a tool path is just what it says. It's going to tell the path. It's going to tell the tool the path it needs to take. The tool being a router with a router bit on it. And you're going to tell it the depth you want it to make, etc. And you create several tool paths. And then you can simulate in the software what the end result will be. And this is what it is. Again, I recognize that because I can't rotate this for you, you can't see the depth of the different holes, pocket holes or grooves that have been created. We'll get to that. But this is a simulator that lets me see if it's created what I visually wanted it to see before I actually make it out of wood. And it also tells me how long it's going to take the CNC to make this. And this is going to take about 18 minutes to make this. This is what I call the back of the puzzle. This is the back, the back. This is the front of the puzzle that will be glued on top. This takes about 6 minutes plus 1 minute because I need to swap out the bit and use the second bit. That second bit actually makes some lines for me close to the perimeter. I'll talk about why I made those later in the presentation. And then this third picture I just created where I cut the puzzle into the 3 pieces. And I did that just so I'd make sure that all the various parts of my routing were where I wanted them to be. This is what the inside of the puzzle looks like. You can see there's coins, but there's also, we've seen the brass rod, the copper nail, but there are other components in there as well, making that puzzle do what it's going to do. I'm going to talk about these in a little more detail as we get into the making of the puzzle, so we'll come back to this picture. One of my goals was to make a puzzle where instead of gluing on the second piece of wood, I used a sheet of plexiglass so I could have a puzzle that you could see how it's working as you went along, and this was the end result. And I was really pleased with this. This really worked slick. We're going to solve this puzzle again at the end of the presentation, and we're going to use this so you can actually experience what's happening as we go through the process instead of just kind of wondering. So we'll come back to this as well. A little more to say about the designing of the puzzle. We saw this picture here of the vectors. What's slick about the software is it allows you to lay on layers on top of each other, kind of like transparencies in the good old days with the view graph machines. I laid on another layer here. It's in red. I know it's a little hard to see. The lines are thin. But all these red parts are moving parts inside my puzzle. And the advantage of this was, if you look at the circles, those circles are the coins. I know those dimensions, so I put the coins in there. And by knowing them, I now know what to make the black lines that are going to be the puzzle, my pocket holes, and I also know the various, this is what I call my coin stop. I kind of know, I start laying that out, and I don't think about dimensions. I just laid it out in the software, and when I get all done and it's working, I'll say on paper, I then now take the dimensions of all the various pieces, and I can make those. But the software helped me do that without having to pull out rulers at the time, and I know everything's going to be properly dimensioned because it's been taken care of here. So that's really nice. Another layer I created is just all the labeling that I gave all my parts. And the labeling is relatively random. I use letters and numbers just to kind of keep track of everything, just so I know the progress of the various parts I'm making and where I am with them. All right, now we're going to start talking about the making of the Freeme 9 puzzle. It starts with wood preparation. Here's a bunch of boards. They've already been cut. I realized I forgot to take a picture of the boards before I cut these. The boards are a little over 6 feet long. They're 74 inches. And the cherry was 8 or 9 inches wide. So the blanks that I'm going to use for my puzzles are 8 3/8 inches long. So over 74 inches, that allowed me to have 8 blanks end to end. And the width allowed me to have 2 widths, so 16 blanks per board. That meant I needed 13 boards of cherry, roughly 3/4 of an inch wide. Actually, they're 4/4. And then for the maple, those are about 4 inches wide. I needed them to be 3.5, and I needed 9 boards of that. So that's what I started with raw stock. Like I said, I took them to my table saw and cut them. I cut them in lengths of either 3 blanks long or 2 blanks long. I then ripped them to 3.5 inches wide, and as you can see, the pile's starting to get a little bigger. And then I took them over to my bandsaw, and I resawed the cherry in half. Before I started with my bandsawing, I made sure that I put brand new bandsaw blade on there, lessons learned from prior work. A nice sharp blade and properly tensioned really makes resawing work really well. So I encourage you to, if you got a big project where you're going to push a lot of wood through your bandsaw, think about replacing that blade before you start. For my maple, I resawed those into 3 strips. I needed the maple to be about 2200ths to start, rough, and then I was going to put them through my thickness planer down to 1500ths. The cherry, both boards, I wanted down to about 3300ths, so the end result, 33 times 2 plus 15. Each puzzle has a thickness of about 0.81. I say about, it wasn't critical that it had to be perfect, but what it was is that all the blanks had to be identical. So I made sure that this step, all the wood went through, all of it was thickness planed all at once, so that as I worked later in, I didn't have to worry about slightly different thicknesses between my material. Took it over my table saw and I cut them all to the proper length of 8 3/8. And I ended up with 3 storage boxes worth of cherry and a box worth of maple. You can't see this picture, but as I zoom in on it here, you'll see numbering. It's very important that that board that I resawed in half, I want to come back later so that I make sure the 2 pieces are the same color, but also the grain all looks like it flows smoothly between the wood. So I took this picture a little later than normal. I had some of the maple already inserted in between, but basically I just make myself a little inverted V and number all that. I'm really messy with it because I don't care, because later I'm going to trim all of that off and you'll never see it. All right, laminate. I'm ready to now laminate one of the cherries and one of the maples together. I made myself a gluing jig for that process. I brought it there. But what you can see is there's a lot of toggle clamps there. There's actually 30. I set it up to make glue 6 or 5 at a time, and each one uses 6 toggle clamps. To start with, I just used my roller with a glue bottle on one of the boards, put it on the other one, put a caul in there, and clamp it all down. There's a 5 in there, and I usually let it sit overnight because I was tired when I got to this process every time. And I said, I'll take care of it the next day. When I get done, I end up with 2 pieces. You can't see it, but the maple has a cherry under there. I stack them all, and I'm keeping them together as I put them into my box. But now I'm ready to go to the CNC machine. Can you stop me over to the other one? It takes 18 minutes. I was hoping to show you it in 36 seconds, all the various steps that it had to go through in the process. The one thing is that while it's working for 18 minutes, I'm in the shop doing a bunch of other stuff. I'm gluing, I'm sanding, I'm making internal components. Oh, there you go. Okay. And so time is not wasted. I'm listening as it's routing to make sure that it doesn't make any undesirable sounds that I'm familiar with. Sadly, it did now and then, and I know that my bit has slipped on me. But most of the time, it did what it was supposed to. And like I said, it's taken 18 minutes to do this. The other one takes 6 minutes plus a minute. So I estimated about a half an hour's worth per puzzle for the CNC. I got 200 of them, so 100 hours worth of CNC routing. Okay, let's switch back to the charts. Ideally, when I get done with the routing, I got a piece that's ready to install internal parts and then glue up. But reality.
I think it's fascinating. I don't mean to interrupt, but I have a question. If you didn't have a CNC machine, how in the world could you maintain the tolerances and the dimensions?
If I didn't have a CNC machine, I wouldn't be up here talking to you right now, because this puzzle would not exist. Yes, yeah. Once I got my CNC machine, my world of possibility opened up. Yes, thank you. All right, next. Oh, I got control. Or do it. Yes, okay. Like I said, ideally it'd be nice and ready to glue up, but it's not. If you look here, there's debris in there. Some of it's loose and I just clean out, but others of it needs kind of chiseling away. My first step was I used a little chisel and I go in there, like I said, while it's routing the next one, I'm cleaning this up and getting some of the debris out of the way. And so it looks a lot nicer, but it still has what I call wood fuzz on it that needs to be sanded off. So I take it to my drill press with my sanding ball from Harbor Freight. They come in different grits. I want to emphasize, I do not sand this with one hand. Right now, I'm holding the camera with the other hand to take a picture, but when I'm sanding this, I got both hands on, because if you catch it wrong, it will want to yank out of your hand. But what's nice about, this sanding ball was really very beneficial in my process. And when I got done, this is a lot smoother piece of board or wood, and it is now ready to put internal components in there and glue up. So making internal parts, lots of internal parts. We've seen this picture, only now I'm pointing out all the various parts that I need to make. And I'll walk you through each one of them. First one are I call them the G blocks. Nothing special about the letter G. It's just what I had when I got to that, to labeling my blocks. But you can see there's 4 different blocks. And if you look, you'll actually, if you're able to kind of, there are rods sticking out of them. So we'll get to that. But these are very small pieces. And if you think about it, not very comfortable thinking about having to cut this on a 10-inch table saw, especially that guy right there. He's not very long. I forget the dimensions, 3/8, maybe 1/2 inch. I forget. So, in talking to my puzzle community guys, they happened to educate me about a tool that was out there, and it's called a Brine's table saw. I brought it with me. But it has a 4-inch blade on it. It's still carbide tips on the end. The kerf is a 1/16 inch. And you can still hurt yourself if you're not careful, so I don't want to minimize its ability. But making use of cutting small components is a lot safer. Over here, it has this is a cross-cut sled. It's made out of aluminum, but it has a stop on it. And I was able to use that to cut all my little parts. I started with the longer guide, it's got a stop there, and then I moved it over for the next piece, and then the smallest piece. And I want to emphasize my safety note. I use the rubber eraser end of a pencil to hold those pieces in place as I cut them through. But everything very dimensionally, very accurate cuts. I still needed to drill holes in the end of these pieces. So over at my drill press, I used some metal bars I had to just create 2 walls in a corner for me here that I could put the piece. And the piece I really want to emphasize here is what I call my drill bit guide. I'm drilling 1/8 inch holes, and if you guys have ever done that, you know those bits like to flex. And when they hit a piece of wood with grain, they like to flex to one side or the other of the grain. So I drilled a hole in the piece of the wood, and then I realigned that piece of wood, and I clamped it in place. When that drill bit goes through that piece of that guide will keep that from flexing as I go down into my actual workpiece to drill my hole. I set this up so that I was able to drill my long pieces, and then I put a spacer in there, and I drilled the next piece, and then I put another spacer in there, and I drilled the last piece. And so I had one set up. I did all the drilling at the same time, and I don't have to worry about realigning or mismatching as I go. 2 of these blocks need to be mated together with a rod and a spring. So I set up a little setup there, and I had a little toggle clamp here with a red handle that I just flip, and that pushed that against that block, presses them together, and I ended up with my piece properly assembled. So I did that as well. All right, now I have 2 end coin holder pieces as well as a 3rd coin holder piece of a different shape. The coins, these Kennedy coins, have a thickness of 0.095. So the actual space that I made my pocket hole here is 1/10 of an inch thick. So my maple pieces needed to be about 0.095 thickness. I did not feel comfortable putting that through my thickness planer. They kind of warned about trying to put that thin of wood through, it flexes. And I've tried it before, and I've had success, and I've had failures where the board flexes up into the blade and starts to shatter on you. But I found out about another tool, and this is a Brine's thickness sander. And it's basically a drum sander. This is the back side, but it's 6 inches. I brought that as well if you want to take a look at it. And it's actually designed where you can have 2 3-inch strips on it for different grits. And that's actually how it's shipped. The boards I was going to push through it were 3 inches, so I didn't swap it out. I just left it as it is. But as you can see, the one side's been used a lot more. That's the finer grit. And you adjust the table with this dial here, and this table then moves up or down rather than the head moving up or down. And you manually feed the board through. It takes a little practice, but not too much. And after a while, you're pushing those boards through, and I'm getting them to the right dimensions. I was able to then lay out my pieces in my CNC software, and you can see the 2 guys and a gal and the Freeme 9 pieces. And the boards I had were about 30 inches long. My CNC machine has only got a workspace of 13 inches. And so I clamped it down, did about 18 pieces, finished it, slid the board, did some more pieces, and that's how I made 400 of these pieces. Likewise, the third coin holder piece, this I used Baltic birch plywood. I started with a 1/4 of an inch Baltic birch, which is really closer to like 0.23 inches. And I sanded that. I actually did push that through my thickness planer and sanded that down, or thickness down to about 1900ths. Then over to the CNC machine. This is a 7x7 arrangement with the corners taken out, so I can make 45 pieces here. The reason the corners are missing is because that's where I put my clamps to hold this place, or hold this piece in place. So I needed to make 5 of those to get 200 plus pieces. All right, springs. I needed 6 different types of springs for this puzzle, and the springs needed to be different diameters as well as different tensions. So I made my own springs. A couple of reasons. Partly because I didn't know what kind of springs I needed. I had to make a prototype, and as then I started experimenting. How many coils, how tension, diameter. Diameter I had a rough idea. So I made a spring making jig. I actually made it years ago for some other puzzles of mine. I can do 3 different diameters by using 3 different rods. And I bought 4 different gauges of springs so that they give me different tensioning. So 3 times 4, I can make 12 different types of springs. The way you do it is you attach the rod to a drill, put it in the appropriate hole. You take the wire and you get about an arm's length worth, and you cut off the end. You put it in between the rod and the washer. You bend the end and you tuck the end into the chuck of the drill. And that's what's going to drive the spring making. This video does work. And you just run it along until it gets all done. And that's the end. Now granted, that spring's a lot longer than I want it to be. So I take a little diagonal cutter, I count the number of coils I need for my spring, cut it off, and I end up with a little spring. And these are the dimensions of the 6 different springs I needed, the rod I determined I needed, the type of wire I needed, and the number of coils I needed. And this is one of the boxes of springs, and I believe this is only half full of the number of springs I needed. You might think, I can see some faces, the word tedious might come to mind in the making, and I'd have to say you are correct in the use of that word. You might say, why didn't I just buy the springs? I did plan to do that way back when I made a puzzle that needed 4 springs times 200 puzzles. I needed 800 springs, and I went researching to buy 1,000 springs, and the cheapest I could get was $1 a spring. And I said, I'm not spending $1,000 for spring, and I started Googling, could I make my own springs? And so that's kind of how I got into the business, and that's why I made them. Anyways, that's my springs. Okay, like I said, ideally it'd be nice and ready to glue up, but it's not. If you look here, there's debris in there. Some of it's loose and I just clean out, but others of it needs kind of chiseling away. My first step was I used a little chisel, and I go in there, like I said, while it's routing the next one, I'm cleaning this up and getting some of the debris out of the way. And so it looks a lot nicer, but it still has what I call wood fuzz on it that needs to be sanded off. So I take it to my drill press with my sanding ball from Harbor Freight. They come in different grits. I want to emphasize, I do not sand this with one hand. Right now I'm holding the camera with the other hand to take a picture, but when I'm sanding this, I got both hands on, because if you catch it wrong, it will want to yank out of your hand. But what's nice about, this sanding ball was really very beneficial in my process. And when I got done, this is a lot smoother piece of board or wood, and it is now ready to put internal components in there and glue up. So making internal parts, lots of internal parts. We've seen this picture, only now I'm pointing out all the various parts that I need to make. And I'll walk you through each one of them. First one are I call them the G blocks. Nothing special about the letter G. It's just what I had when I got to that, to labeling my blocks. But you can see there's 4 different blocks. And if you look, you'll actually, if you're able to kind of, there are rods sticking out of them. So we'll get to that. But these are very small pieces. And if you think about it, not very comfortable thinking about having to cut this on a 10-inch table saw, especially that guy right there. He's not very long. I forget the dimensions, 3/8, maybe 1/2 inch. I forget. So in talking to my puzzle community guys, they happened to educate me about a tool that was out there, and it's called a Brine's table saw. I brought it with me. But it has a 4-inch blade on it. It's still carbide tips on the end. The kerf is a 1/16 inch. And you can still hurt yourself if you're not careful, so I don't want to minimize its ability. But making use of cutting small components is a lot safer. Over here, it has this is a cross-cut sled. It's made out of aluminum, but it has a stop on it. And I was able to use that to cut all my little parts. I started with the longer guide, it's got a stop there, and then I moved it over for the next piece, and then the smallest piece. And I want to emphasize my safety note. I use the rubber eraser end of a pencil to hold those pieces in place as I cut them through. But everything very dimensionally, very accurate cuts. I still needed to drill holes in the end of these pieces. So over at my drill press, I used some metal bars I had to just create 2 walls in a corner for me here that I could put the piece. And the piece I really want to emphasize here is what I call my drill bit guide. I'm drilling 1/8 inch holes, and if you guys have ever done that, you know those bits like to flex. And when they hit a piece of wood with grain, they like to flex to one side or the other of the grain. So I drilled a hole in the piece of the wood, and then I realigned that piece of wood, and I clamped it in place. When that drill bit goes through that piece of that guide will keep that from flexing as I go down into my actual workpiece to drill my hole. I set this up so that I was able to drill my long pieces, and then I put a spacer in there, and I drilled the next piece, and then I put another spacer in there, and I drilled the last piece. And so I had one set up. I did all the drilling at the same time, and I don't have to worry about realigning or mismatching as I go. 2 of these blocks need to be mated together with a rod and a spring. So I set up a little setup there, and I had a little toggle clamp here with a red handle that I just flip, and that pushed that against that block, presses them together, and I ended up with my piece properly assembled. So I did that as well. All right, now I have 2 end coin holder pieces as well as a 3rd coin holder piece of a different shape. The coins, these Kennedy coins, have a thickness of 0.095. So the actual space that I made my pocket hole here is 1/10 of an inch thick. So my maple pieces needed to be about 0.095 thickness. I did not feel comfortable putting that through my thickness planer. They kind of warned about trying to put that thin of wood through, it flexes. And I've tried it before, and I've had success, and I've had failures where the board flexes up into the blade and starts to shatter on you. But I found out about another tool, and this is a Brine's thickness sander. And it's basically a drum sander. This is the back side, but it's 6 inches. I brought that as well if you want to take a look at it. And it's actually designed where you can have 2 3-inch strips on it for different grits. And that's actually how it's shipped. The boards I was going to push through it were 3 inches, so I didn't swap it out. I just left it as it is. But as you can see, the one side's been used a lot more. That's the finer grit. And you adjust the table with this dial here, and this table then moves up or down rather than the head moving up or down. And you manually feed the board through. It takes a little practice, but not too much. And after a while, you're pushing those boards through, and I'm getting them to the right dimensions. I was able to then lay out my pieces in my CNC software, and you can see the 2 guys and a gal and the Freeme 9 pieces. And the boards I had were about 30 inches long. My CNC machine has only got a workspace of 13 inches. And so I clamped it down, did about 18 pieces, finished it, slid the board, did some more pieces, and that's how I made 400 of these pieces. Likewise, the third coin holder piece, this I used Baltic birch plywood. I started with a 1/4 of an inch Baltic birch, which is really closer to like 0.23 inches. And I sanded that. I actually did push that through my thickness planer and sanded that down, or thickness down to about 1900ths. Then over to the CNC machine. This is a 7x7 arrangement with the corners taken out, so I can make 45 pieces here. The reason the corners are missing is because that's where I put my clamps to hold this place, or hold this piece in place. So I needed to make 5 of those to get 200 plus pieces. All right, springs. I needed 6 different types of springs for this puzzle, and the springs needed to be different diameters as well as different tensions. So I made my own springs. A couple of reasons. Partly because I didn't know what kind of springs I needed. I had to make a prototype, and as then I started experimenting, how many coils, how tension, diameter. Diameter I had a rough idea. So I made a spring making jig. I actually made it years ago for some other puzzles of mine. I can do 3 different diameters by using 3 different rods. And I bought 4 different gauges of springs so that they give me different tensioning. So 3 times 4, I can make 12 different types of springs. The way you do it is you attach the rod to a drill, put it in the appropriate hole. You take the wire and you get about an arm's length worth, and you cut off the end. You put it in between the rod and the washer. You bend the end and you tuck the end into the chuck of the drill. And that's what's going to drive the spring making. This video does work. And you just run it along until it gets all done. And that's the end. Now granted, that spring's a lot longer than I want it to be. So I take a little diagonal cutter, I count the number of coils I need for my spring, cut it off, and I end up with a little spring. And these are the dimensions of the 6 different springs I needed. The rod I determined I needed, the type of wire I needed, and the number of coils I needed. And this is one of the boxes of springs, and I believe this is only half full of the number of springs I needed. You might think, I can see some faces, the word tedious might come to mind in the making, and I'd have to say you are correct in the use of that word. You might say, why didn't I just buy the springs? I did plan to do that way back when I made a puzzle that needed 4 springs times 200 puzzles. I needed 800 springs, and I went researching to buy 1,000 springs, and the cheapest I could get was $1 a spring. And I said, I'm not spending $1,000 for a spring, and I started Googling, could I make my own springs? And so that's kind of how I got into the business, and that's why I made them. Anyways, that's my springs. Okay, this is called a copper nail. I needed a rod that had a head on the end of it, and I thought, well, nails have that, but they also have points on the other end, and I didn't want the point. So I needed to cut that off, and my thought was, I need a grinder, but it's a little tricky to be accurate with that. I could make a jig, and I'd done that before. And then I thought, hey, what if I took my table saw, Brian's table saw, and see if I could turn that into a grinder table. And it turns out that the blade is a little smaller than the 4 inches that I needed, but the arbor, the holes, were slightly different. The table saw has a 1/2 inch arbor, and my grinder, 5/8 inch. Well, it turns out you can buy yourself a little reducer ring there to compensate for that difference. And I tried it, put it all together, and sure enough, I was able to get that thing working. made myself a jig, and you can see that here's the nail that would go into that jig. There's actually 5 nails in there right now, and it's a little longer than it needs to be. And flip it over, set it up, and I start to push it through. And I'm not going to make the sounds, but it was like, when there was 5 of those, and after I heard 5 times, I knew I was done. And I took it out, and there are all my nails, cut to the exact length that I need them. Now they are a little rough on the end, and I thought I was going to have to sand or file all those, and I said, let's try that sanding ball. Work, slick. And before I knew it, I had all my nails cleaned off. So that was really nice. All right, now, that was the making of all the parts, but I also bought parts wherever I could. I bought the 3 coins from the mint, nice and shiny. I bought 3 different magnets. This magnet over here is actually what I call a donut magnet. It's got a hole in the middle. Came that way so that I could put a rod through the center and epoxy that in place. And I also got the little white push pin, loaded magnet or pin there. And then I have several metal rods of different lengths that I needed to use along the way. I was able to buy all those way back before I discovered this, and I'll say before the internet. I bought a long rod, used a grinder, cut it, filed it. Very tedious in that situation. So when I found this company, I was like, oh yes, I'll pay the money for that. And I also have a couple of steel balls that I use in my puzzle. All right, it's time to install the internal parts and laminate that 3rd piece onto the puzzle. This is a little storage box to get organized. It was very important to make sure that all the pieces that need to go in before I glue do not get forgotten. If I forget any of them, that puzzle's wrecked. So I made sure I organized this, and I'm going to glue 5 puzzles at a time. If you'd actually count, you'd count 6 pieces in there. The reason is I'm taking 5 out for my puzzle, and I leave 1 in there to remind me of what I need to restock with. Here are the 5 puzzles, loaded up with all the internal parts. And then here are one set, mating parts, ready to be glued. This is where that line comes in into place. If I was to put glue along that whole top, flip it over and press it down together, I'm gonna have a lot of internal parts that are now glued in place and the puzzle's wrecked. So I put a line there and strategically figured out where I could put glue safely so that when I flipped it over, I wouldn't be gluing all my parts. The other thing I want to point out is I've got 2 little holes here. These are what I call index holes. On the other side, there are 2 rods that are 1/4 of an inch, and they stick out about 1/8 of an inch. When I flip that piece over, I slide those into the index holes, and my coin holes all now perfectly line up, just like I need them to. And I know that when I glue, I'm not going to get any sliding around of those 2 pieces of wood. Well, now I'm ready to go clamp it up. You've seen this picture before. This is where I'm now clamping the other part on. The next day, I start to unclamp. I've got my pieces, I pull them all out, and I store them in my shoe boxes, 7 at a time, because that's what fits. And this is where I find myself just taking a moment to reflect. And I look at what I've got going on. I've got a gluing station over there, and then this is where they actually, in the jig, here's a collection of my parts. While I'm looking, I can hear behind me the CNC machine is running. I got my, my spring making kit station over there, and I realize I have still got a lot to do, you know. I still got a trim, I got a round over, cut, sand, chamfer, dovetail, drill, press, glue. And I'm wondering to myself, will this ever end? Much like you guys might be thinking right now. But yes, it does. First step, trimming. This is what's important to think about. I need to trim that outer edge, and I got to do it accurately. And the reason is, we've seen this piece, but what's important is there are 3 places here where those components are 1/16 of an inch from the edge. If I get too far away, the magnets aren't going to pull like they need to, and if I get too close, well, now pieces are flying out and the puzzle's wrecked as well. So either way, I got a problem. So I thought to myself, where can I reference to make sure that I index so that I successfully cut repeatedly exactly where I want to. And I realized what I could use is the coin holes. I could use those surfaces. So by knowing that, I used my CNC machine software and I created some holes on rods, and that's what I do. I now put my puzzle in there, I push it against the coin holes and pull, and when I push my board through, it trims exactly where I needed it to. As it turns out, the puzzle is not perfectly symmetrical. It almost looks like it is, but it's actually one side's 1/8 of an inch longer or shorter, whichever you want to say, than the other side. So I needed to make 2 sets of holes so that I could rotate it 180 and trim the other end. Likewise, for the length, I have another jig that I then push through and rotate 180 to trim all those. And I now have a nice clean outer edge of my puzzle, which is ready to take over to my router table and round over. I used an 1/8 inch radius round over bit on all 12 edges to clean it up. And now I'm ready to take it back to my crosscut sled, and I'm going to cut my puzzle into 3 pieces. I use the same logic. I reference off a hole, and I trim it, and I cut my 2 ends. So I'm now ready to make some dovetails. I have learned, so a reapplied lesson from other puzzles, when you're making a dovetail, and specifically I should show you, I guess, a couple more comments. This is the end result of cutting all those pieces, keeping in mind that I have 3 pieces to my puzzle now instead of 1. I want all 3 of those pieces to stay together, so now I have to number the inside of all these pieces so that they all stay together. So I got a number and a left and a right, but you can't see the numbering's too small. So anyways, the dovetail. Specifically, I've got a dovetail that the end piece, the shorter piece, I call the female portion. The other one is the male portion. And I've learned with the female portion, there's a lot of wood for that dovetail to try to push through and really work hard. So if you can, trim out some of that wood first. And that's what I did on my crosscut sled. I used the jigs for a simple purpose of making them walls. And then I took the end piece and I just pushed it through against one wall, the other wall, rotated it 180, and again, and I ended up with a nice chewed out piece of a groove there before I put it into my dovetail. Made my dovetail bit work a lot less, harder. Take it over my router table, and I routed it, and this kind of shows you what it looks like here. That bit is 1/4 of an inch up. It's a 14-degree bit. I push it through, rotate it 180, push it through again, and that perfectly centers that dovetail bit, or dovetail in the center. The top of that dovetail is 1/2 an inch wide. I wanted mine to be a little wider, so I played with the fence until I got the width I wanted. Set everything back up again, and then I pushed all 400 ends through at the same time so that I had, again, consistency with all my dovetails. Once that was done, I was ready to do the male end, and that's what it looked like here. I had to move the fence, and I had the fence in close, made some dovetail cuts, compared it to the end piece, see how it's fitting. No, it won't quite fit yet. Moved the fence a little, kept checking, until finally I got the fit I wanted. And now I'm ready to actually make the dovetails. That being said, you'd expect you could just run 200 of these through, boom, everything fits perfectly. But the nature of wood and the nature of, I think, maybe the gluing process, although these things are almost perfectly the same thickness, they're not perfectly the same thickness. I've learned to do about 10 of these at a time and then check them with their appropriate end pieces. And most of the time they fit nicely, but sometimes they didn't quite fit. They were too snug. And so what I found worked successfully is I pushed it through again, but pushed against that fence a little to try to get it to flex as I went. And I could hear it shaving just a little off. I checked, and that technique worked. So I didn't have to actually adjust the fence, just pushing on my fence a little. But what's important, what I want to emphasize, is to make sure you double check all those before you kind of move on. The first time I ever did this, I didn't, and I had to go back and try to resolve that problem. All right. I'm done with all that. I've got it all ready now. The 3 pieces all fit together. Before I actually chamfer the coin holes, I take this over to my belt sander and I sand this flush so that all 3 end pieces feel nice and smooth, like there's no seam there. And that also kind of helps clean up this edge where you can see that just a little kind of chip out there, but it's really minor. And once you oil it, it's not too bad. But I do chamfer these holes. This is the end result. This gives you a nice soft feel when you're actually pulling on those coins. Plus, I think it gives it a nice look. How deep should I make that chamfer? Deep enough that it looks nice and it's effective. So I kind of played with it, got what felt nice, and then I did them all. The last thing I need to do, if you recall, there's that when I take the left end magnet piece, put it on the right end, and I'm pulling that pin down. I need to hold that into place, and I had a little piece of wood that I spread some glue, put that wood piece in there, and I clamp it down with a nice durable rubber band. And it worked just fine. I got a little block there to push on the wood, and then the rubber band, I let it sit overnight, and that holds that in place. The other comment to make, there's another hole here. If you remember, that's where that white plastic plug went. And I'm not going to put that in until after I oil the pieces, which I'm ready to do now. One thing about oiling, think about it, I've got 3 pieces, the 2 ends and the center piece. I'm going to oil about 20 at a time on my workbench. That's the space I've got. And that center piece, I want to let dry. Now, somebody said they really like to work with Danish oil. That's what I use. I like it as well. I've learned that it's dry to the touch after 24 hours. I mean, you could work with it if you need to. But my experience has been there's a curing that takes place, and it's several days. So what I really need to do is I needed to figure out a way to move these big pieces out of the way and let them dry without laying up against something. Not only that, I'm going to oil another 20 and another 20. And so I came up with a technique. I had some pegboard that was laying around, and I had some long hooks, and I started hanging my puzzles on there, and I was able to just get them out of the way. And I was able to continue oiling, and there's about 84 puzzles hanging there, and that's about half of the puzzles. And I let them dry, and then I'm working on other stuff. And finally, I say, okay, they're dry enough. Let's start putting, oh yeah, by the way, the end pieces, likewise, I oiled all those, stored them in lid top, or storage box tops, and I was able to rotate them 90 degrees and just stack them kind of like a Jenga tower. Let those dry. I'm now ready to install all the additional internal components, verify the puzzles work. I remate the end pieces back together. I pull off the appropriate puzzle pieces, and I assemble all the internal pieces. And when I'm done, they end up in more shoe boxes. And these are now completed puzzles ready to start selling and shipping to my customers. And that's what I do. I send out an email from my distribution list, notify my customers that Freeme 9 is finally ready. If you're interested, let me know. And I was fortunate enough, I've become familiar enough to my puzzle community people that I let them know that I had these puzzles, and in about a day I had 100 of them sold. And so that was nice. But I got to have them shipping, so while they're letting me know they want to buy them, I'm working on the shipping process. I've got my puzzle along with an instruction card and bubble wrap. I wrap them all up, stick them in appropriate size boxes, and I stack the boxes, and that's about half the boxes that I ultimately end up with. And there's our dog Timmy, curious what's going on. And this is a kind of a summary of the puzzles that I shipped out to. Total of 19 different countries that I shipped off to. A bulk of them, United States, I sold 71 puzzles, so about 60%. But 40% of my sales are internationally sold. And so I've acquired this distribution list over the years. People find out about my puzzles. They send me an email and say, hey, could you add me to the list? So I do. The total sales is 114. Now that's curious because I told you I wanted to sell 150. So why didn't I sell 150? Let's talk about failures. I'll tell you what the problem is, but I'll show it to you first. There's my piles of failures. And a portion of them were because the bit got loose. Why did the bit get loose? Well, I decided to go cheap, And I found some bits out there that you could buy that weren't expensive. I knew I was going to be going through a lot of them. So I said, what could I do? And initially I was happy with the results. But when I started having some problems where despite tightening my bits down tight, they still moved on me. I measured the shafts on these. They were supposed to be 0.125, so 1/8 of an inch. Oh, these are 0.1235. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I noticed that they were a little easy to move in my collet, which was, I bought a special 1/8 inch collet for my router. And like I said, a lot of times I didn't have issues. Other times I found they did slip on me. As I was working on other stuff in the basement, I would hear my router moving along, and suddenly I'd hear it go, and I could hear it was working harder than it should have. And I hurried over quickly. The bit had moved on me. So, but the other thing I found, and I don't know the exact answer, I have a speculation, but I will be investigating this now that I'm done with my puzzles. I found that my Z-axis didn't go the depth it needed to. It was at times a couple hundredths off. So I don't know if that's because the bit slipped the other direction just a little, or if my CNC machine wasn't going down as deep as it should have. So like I said, I'll be investigating that in time. But I didn't know that that was a problem to worry about, so I didn't check. So I glued all my puzzles together, and then as I started checking the pieces and trying to get things to move, they weren't moving all the time. Some did, and that was good, but some didn't. And then before I was actually done making all of them, I stopped and I was like, what's going on here? And I started making measurements, and that's what I found out. So sadly, I had a lot of puzzles glued together already, on the order of 60 puzzles, which is 30% of my failures. Way bigger than I had planned on the process. So I'm making a second batch to replace these, and I've notified some of my collectors who were still interested, but I was all out. So I will be selling some more before the end of the year. That's my goal. So that's the story there. So as a result, I got some lessons learned. First one is cheaper is not always cheaper. I'm not going to buy those bits anymore. I'll spend a little more money to make sure I've got the right ones. Plan for some percentage of failure, hopefully not 30%, but I called it failure, but also they're prototypes. As you're going and you're doing setups of various parts of your process, you're going to need to take one of your blanks or 2 or 3 to check it all out, make sure it's working. So, my goal is usually to plan in 5%, maybe, not 30. Keep checking measurements whenever and wherever possible, so can't overemphasize that. Run the dovetails through the table saw first, I mentioned that. Double check the dovetails frequently, I mentioned that. Don't make things if you can buy them, like steel rods, but make things if you think you might change. And for example, the springs, I had to be flexible in making those. Buy coins uncirculated from the US Mint. The coins are 50-cent pieces. They charge me 75 cents because they're uncirculated. And initially I thought, what a ripoff. But I said, hey, I'll just add that cost to my puzzle that I sell. But the wood part looks really nice when you're done. I said, I want my coins to look really nice as well. So I decided it was an appropriate investment. Be flexible if changes yield better results. As I made my prototype and played with it, I found out that there was a way to solve it that I didn't want you to be able to solve. And I was like, oh, how do I fix it? With a little thought, I was able to make some movements internally that made that go away. And so I did, and I made new prototypes, and then the whole process. Let the tools help with accuracy. That was where I made my jigs with the help of my CNC machine. And look for ways to expand the tool usage safely, and that's where I was able to use my table saw as a grinder. And then track time and expense, say time expended and cost of materials to gauge the process as well as the costs that I ultimately want to sell my puzzles for. This page here is a spreadsheet. This is just a sample from my spreadsheet. This is where I'm making the 2 coin holders. What I do is I lay out my spreadsheet with a major task, and then I'll say all the subtasks for that. I make an estimate of how much I think all those steps are going to take, and then periodically I just pause and I write down how far I think I am with all those various steps. And that allows me to gauge how far along I am. At this stage, if you look at the blue up at the top, it says I'm 44% along. Well, if you look to the right, it tells you how long, how many hours it's going to take me to make this puzzle, about 600 hours. And so I know that I still got 300 plus hours to go. But at some point, it eventually got to 100%, and I got done. And so with that, we're going to do the solution one more time, but you're going to get to see what the inside looks like. So overhead camera, or the over-the-shoulder camera. All right. I'll let you zoom in a little here. Okay, as we know, we got to turn to the right. When I pull on this coin here, we can see that that moves that rod, pulls down the spring, but if we look at the brass rod, we can see that moves down, and it allows me to push this. And as I pushed it, the nail that was sitting on this ledge right here fell off, so that when I pull this coin here, it moves those balls out of the way, lets that copper nail fall down just a little so I can slide this end off. I take my brass rod, drop it in there, we can see it gets stopped. I pull that coin, moves the balls all the way, and I shake a little, and it lets that brass rod fall all the way down. Put the coin or the copper nail in, I push on that, that moves the brass rod, which moves the wooden block, which pushes on that white plug way at the bottom and gets it to move out of the way. But as we know, I need the magnet. I put that there, and we can see that that moves that pin. And so now when I use that push, I can now slide the whole thing out of the way. I need this left end again for that magnet. I slide it on the right end. And if we watch this piece right there, we'll see that that moves out of my way for that steel rod. When I move this with my brass rod, we can see it moves, but it doesn't move far enough over because the third coin holder, let's see if I can, is in the way. So now when I move it, now it gets out of the way. And when I tip it, the rod falls out and I can get the coin out. And there you have it. And that's the end of my presentation. All right, we have some questions. Get a microphone. Appreciate it.
Joe, I just want to wonder how many pieces are there in that puzzle?
You know, I meant to count because I usually do that. We can count now, but no. So I'm not sure. Like I said, I should have counted. I'm going to say 30 plus. Yeah, maybe 30 to 40. Yeah. So between the purchase and the main. Another question over here. Just a second. Wait, just a second.
I said, what does your psychiatrist say about this?
He says I've got a healthy habit here. Keeps me from having to visit him. Any other questions? Oh, there's a question over there. Yeah.
For your bits, Woodworkers now is making an 1/8-inch upcut spiral solid carbide bit. You might look into those. They're real good quality bits from the ones I've already gotten. So just
what do they cost?
They've got, I'm not really sure. They're really competitive in price because they're making them themselves, so they eliminate the middleman.
Okay, well, good. Good
And
to know.
another suggestion on when you're doing your chamfers on your inside holes, you use a foot pedal switch on your router table, so you can just have the router off and get it set over it. Then you can step on the pedal, your router will come on, and you can, so you're not trying to set it down over a spinning bit.
Okay, well, okay, so I will mention, I appreciate that. Because the hole is big enough, I find that it is safe, I'm comfortable, that I set it over and I run it, and I just keep moving, so I never do turn it off. If it was smaller, I think what you're saying, I'd probably be concerned about it, but yeah, okay, so I appreciate the input. Question back there?
How many different layers do you have to your, say the first side with the maple on it? Each layer is a different depth, I presume. That's how most CNCs work? Or-
Each layer, I guess, are you saying for the routing? Or
You're talking about having layers?
I had 3 layers. So I
Three
had the
layers.
cherry, maple, cherry.
No. I mean for the process of the CNC. Digital layers.
Oh, okay, yeah. Actually,
each one has a
no.
different Z value?
No, actually, so no, for making the actual puzzle, it was just from one layer.
Okay.
What was nice is I could have multiple layers if I wanted to have distinction of information. So I created a layer of just moving parts so that I could make it another color and I could look at it. But basically, they don't interact with each other.
That's what we had called we called them layers, and each tool at each depth, or the same tool at 2 different depths was 2 layers.
Yeah, okay.
When you said layers, that's what I connected.
Yeah, a different usage of that term. Yeah, sorry for the confusion. Okay, we're not quite done. If we're done with questions, then I've got something else. We have another question, yeah. Okay, so the question is, what am I selling them for? Each of these puzzles go for $250 each. And like I said, I sold 100 of them in a day. So there are people out there that like to collect hard puzzles. And so.
Why not go ahead and chamfer the coin holes right when you cut them out on CNC?
It's a good question, and I didn't say why. Before I chamfered them, I should have mentioned I sanded them because I wanted them to be nice and clean. But I didn't want to sand them before I indexed off of them because I thought that will, if I sand too much and then I use my cutting jig or my trimming jig, I'll have shifted things slightly different from puzzle to puzzle. So I said I got to leave it all alone till after I've done the cutting. So I consciously waited until after that because I was sanding the hole before I chamfered, but after the cutting. Did I answer your question? Otherwise, we can talk about it later. Yeah, okay. All right, if you all, another question?
When you sell a puzzle, do you sell the solution too, or is that extra?
So do I sell the solution? Actually, the puzzle's $5. The solution is $245. No, the solution comes free. Now, what is interesting about that question is, in the past, I would sell the puzzle and include a solution. This year, I decided I'm going to sell the puzzle, and I told all the collectors that I would email the solution out 3 months later so that they wouldn't be tempted to look right away. Because I had a feeling that some were looking pretty fast, and they've all gotten their solution. They've all gotten their solution now. That's why I was willing to do the presentation. Yeah. So, if there are no other questions, thank you very much. I appreciate your attention.